Respected guest speaker, Ms. Sona Prakash, Managing Director of Drizzle, I extend a cordial welcome to Ms. Sona Prakash, who has agreed to enlighten our students by sharing her thoughts on the generation that thinks differently.
Start with a quote by Leo Tolstoy. The true noble warriors are patience and time. And I suppose in today's way of online meetings and talks, I request a gentle reminder for this audio viewers to be patient and to give their time in listening to my thoughts of a generation that is different. To start with, we already have the first slide on the screen. The generation that thinks differently. So the first thing that I would like to say why this topic is because we find it very fitting to the changes that have occurred evidently between the generations now. Having been associated with a lot of youngsters in social work and educational backgrounds, and various contacts that I have been having with the younger generation, and as a young mother for teenage children, I think this topic is a very fitting one for the current times. The topic comes as a practical need into understanding the distance between the generations and not a gap. I remember Girima mentioning its generation gap. Why don't we alter it and say that it is just the distance and not a gap? So we can always bridge the gap. Therefore, it is imperative that we observe, analyze, and acknowledge the pattern of changes that have occurred faster than we could catch up with at some time. I prefer calling it a distance in generation than a generation gap, as it is a more positive approach towards building the time difference that we have between these generations. How I wish this could actually be a more interactive session where we could have it more like a discussion than a talk. But unfortunately, let's hope that things are better soon and we would be able to meet in person. Unfortunate that we cannot do so right now. And so moving on to what this topic is about. What is the current generation? When I was trying to understand more about it and do my own research before I would come to the forum and talk about it, these are the things that I really understood about what is this generation. What do you mean by this generation? What is the time frame, the age group, and what are we focusing on when we say this generation? Slide one clearly shows that there are different stages of generations. How do we differentiate? So we will leave the earlier part where the silent generation is there. We have the baby boomers. Most of us belong to that as parents. And then we have the generation X. And then we have that also as a common thing between parents now. And then we have the millennials. And then we have the generation Z and the generation Alpha, which is there. And as clearly marked there, we have distinct age group and time frame in which these generations belong to. But our main focus today will be on the current generation, which we will pick as the millennial generation and the generation Z, which is from 1981 to 1996 for millennials and 1997 to 2012 for Gen Z. Can we have slide two, please? Thank you. So we have here now very clearly marked about how the generation has seen its ups and downs and how it is moving from one phase to another. So we picked the current millennial and the Gen Z to talk about and how it has impacted our lives today, because that is our future, our immediate future and the current generation. Can we have slide three, please? Okay, there is a humor to this slide. This is just to mark the process of thought that is different from the current generation to the previous one. Boomers, to the generation there where we belong to, would have said, "I hate my wife," and now the millennials say, "I hate my life." So that's just a pun, but not really. But of course, they are enjoying their life much more than what it is. So if we would actually have to go on to understanding what the difference is to the current generations, let's understand a bit about the boomers, the generation X. Had this classification we had as parents belong to the generations where we are more of a man versus man kind of a mindset, where we were trying to prove things for other people. We did things to please other people and we tried to prove ourselves to other people. It was more of a generation that lived to please others. So we were more of a man versus man. In that, we were more a weaker mindset of people where we didn't have our own individuality. So things changed when people became more aware in the next generation. So in the millennials, they are called as the modernism. So when the modernism happened, there are this kid generation, not this slide, this is good. We have modernization happening, and the generation always complain is what is the understanding of psychologists. Although they complain, but still they were pushing themselves forward. And analysis shows that they were more of a man versus self. So they were fighting themselves. It was more of a better version of themselves. So the millennials always wanted to be a better version of themselves. So they were into a constant war within themselves, asking, how do I be a better version of me? So if you would actually go back in time and see all these talks and their thoughts, it would be more like, I want to be a better version of me. I don't want to be compared to anybody else. So that is the thought. So that the generation Z continues on next. The generation Z is more of a post-modernization. So we have there where they feel that they are more entitled towards everything that they have in life. So they are more of a man versus reality kind of a generation, where it is a complete change of attitude, where they feel like I don't have to prove myself to anyone or for anything. I can't be forced. That's the attitude of this generation. I will do what I feel like doing, what is right to me, not because I have to please somebody else outside. So they are living in a reality, and they take it easy on them. It's an easygoing generation. It's more like just go with the flow and take things as it comes. And we call this generation a happy generation also, because they think they are entitled, which is why they're called as a more aware generation also, because they actually know what is their capability and what they are really entitled for as well. And they are much happier in a way where they get to choose what they want to be. So I would also call this as a part of good arrogance. I'm a fan of good arrogance, and I think this generation exhibits more of the good arrogance. And in a way, it is also a way to exhibit your strength. Why good arrogance? Because you are actually aware of your strength and you go about exhibiting it not to put down somebody else, but to shine more from yourself inside to the reality of what you are. Now, the differences that we are talking about between the generations here and why they are different is more pertaining to the people and the country of India that we are discussing about, because we are the recently modernized country in the world, and we have modernized so fast that we actually didn't have time for the previous generations to catch up with the current generation. So the striking factor is the use of technology. That is how more of the generation distance actually happened. If we talk about the millennials, they use more, if we have to talk of technology, they use more of Facebook, Instagram. If you take Gen Z, they use more of Snapchat and Instagram. And then they are more expressive. They're expressive in a way that they want to share everything on social media. Their happiness, their sorrow, they're ready to share everything. And obvious change in times is that they're bold. They want to share what they feel. They don't want to hide their feelings. And just to list out a few of the aspects of technology that have changed during this generation, we would see that the pace of the way that things are done has definitely been at a more faster mode as compared to us. Even if we take some basic classical music compared to the rap singing, from the ballroom dancing to the locking style, from Bharatanatyam to Bollywood, then we used to be interested in chess and carom. Now, if you go and ask them, they have a whole list of games online, PUBG, and you just could name a million games that they have. So even in our food habits, we have seen changes where they are not interested in everyday mundane cooking, and they want to have fast food. So there is a change in every aspect of it. Now, how do we bridge this gap that we have with the generation that is so different? We have to be more observing, more clear, and more firm in supporting them to have a continuous touch with the reality that is not virtual, because they are right now caught up in a virtual real world. I often tell my children, it is not enough to just build on a Minecraft, the trees and the houses. I wish you would go out and be able to identify the real trees, the real houses, if you could play with real bricks and, clay and mortar and cement. That is where reality is. Although they are as much as exposed to reality, they are also distant because of the virtual world that they live in. So we, as the generation that is from the generation X, will have to help them to bridge this difference also. So we could also catch up with them into their pace, and they could come down to our pace. The current generation has kind of squeezed up 24 hours into a 48-hour energy pack. So if you see, they want to do everything at the same time. They are eating, they are attending class, they are chatting with their friends, and then they are also updating themselves about technology. So they are into everything. So it is not the kind of generation that we would have lived in, where there was lesser temptation. They have access to every kind of information, every kind of wanted, unwanted information. Therefore, it is essential for us to understand that this generation is different because they are power packed with more information. It is a super highway, and they are already in the super highway. So we have to catch up to understand first what is it that they are looking for as information. And as parents, it is our responsibility to be there to guide them, and to also for us to be able to understand the aspect of their peer pressure and their joys of knowing more information. When we had joy of information, it was more for knowledge. For them, the joy of knowledge itself is to take it to another friend and to share that they know this, and then they want to be discussing about it. We were not allowed to discuss certain topics, but this current generation is able to talk so many different topics in an open forum. The things that we cannot expect with this current generation is implicit obedience. So if we talk of implicit obedience in our generations, yes, when our parents told us something, then we would follow it religiously. But this generation likes to be more of a reasoning and a rational thinking generation. So if you are going to tell them something, they want to say, ask, what is the reason? And we no longer have to give them any advice. We have to only suggest them. You cannot tell them this is the path. They would have million reasons why the paths have to be divided, and why you can take the road that's less traveled as well. I would say, in a way, they are much more smarter. So we have to be aware of how we are going to guide them. Therefore, it is essential for us as Generation X to be more equipped in having the knowledge to guide them. Also, I would like to take on the perception and the attitude of this generation. As much as we think there is a gap and there is a distance between one generation to another, there is also lots that we have to learn from this generation. The concept of the selfie, which was introduced by the current generation. Selfie is more of a self-love. You enjoy yourself, the way you are, the way you look. And then you also have filters and, a lot of other things where it is an added fun where you fantasize what you could be, but then you come down to reality and you're willing to daringly post whatever you feel like on social media. The generation now is ready to talk about their exams, their relationship, their opinions. I even saw a funny post of one of the boys that I know of who had actually flunked in an exam. In our times, things would have gone differently, where we would have been under pressure from home and we would have been under our own self-pressure, where we wouldn't want to say this out loud into the world. There was this boy who actually went out boldly, posting it on Instagram that he flunked in an exam, but he's still having fun. So that such is the confidence of children, because they know that this is not the end of the world. They know that there's opportunity galore and they could pick. And these are the things that are different in this generation. So such zeal and enthusiasm towards living life is definitely something that we as a Generation X will have to learn from them. If you talk of proverbs and quotes, they are not there. They don't want all those big words. They're more interested in memes and trolls, which is more funny. So they want to see always the funny side of life. But of course, it does have a lot of meaning to what the current situations are and what is happening in the world. But you cannot tell them the mundane way of storytelling or news reading. It doesn't go well with them. They are more aware and informed through memes and trolls, which is a positive way of looking at the world. That means they are more highlighting the lighter side of life, which actually brings down the stress that they are in through all that they are exposed to throughout their life of learning. There was an incident where I would like to quote as well. They are more empathetical towards people's feeling. I would say this as a parent that it is very important that your children are raised empathetically. Reason being, they are more sensitive towards others' feelings. There was an incident where one of my son's friends had come home, and having had to meet them after a few years, it was surprising that the children have grown, and it was a spontaneous comment that my husband and we did pass, saying that it is nice that you have lost weight and you look different. But it didn't go well with my son. Why I would like to quote this is what we wouldn't have even considered as a thing of insult or a thing of concern has changed now. And my son walked up and said that you have insulted my friend. That's not how you ask. You don't comment about a person's physical appearance, because when you comment it in a nice way also, it is still wrong. It is not acceptable unless they talk about it. So these are the things that are different in this generation. They are sensitive towards people's feeling, and I'm sure they will build a better future and a better world that we all dream of. They love themselves and they are okay for their own criticism by themselves. They don't wait for other people to criticize. If they are wrong, they are wrong. They make memes on themselves. They make funny videos on themselves. They're ready to accept what is wrong in them, and they're ready to correct it, which didn't happen with our generation. We had more ego, and I think they have less ego because they're more aware of what is their strength and what is their weakness as well. It is as important to know your weakness as much as you would know your strength. And this is something that is very different in this generation. And you can never bully anybody from this generation because they're not going to tolerate any of your bullying or any of our negative advices. We were always threatened for disciplining. That doesn't work with this generation. because they don't accept implicit obedience is one thing, and also they don't accept negative way of approach to life. They want a positive way of approach. You can never go and tell your child, well, if you don't practice, this is what is going to happen. They would expect you to rather say that, you can practice, your competition is coming up, so you know what it is. So that is the kind of attitude change that has happened. And what influences the generation and the knowledge, if you would see, is the exposure of the parents. This is very important aspect, as we are more into either a nuclear family or we are more into a smaller knit family. The surroundings and the education that the children receive, and the parental influence. Why is it important that the parents are well aware? Is because the kids are pressured to sharing what they learn. And if we as parents are more aware of what is the thought process that is happening within the generation and within the friends, then it makes it easier for us to bridge the difference and to connect with them and to be able to understand them in a friendly aspect than as a parent with them. The peer pressure also was there for us, but then the peer pressure for them is different because they're still more individualistic when it comes to pressure as well. So they want to prove things, but more of a realistic one than to break the barriers which will mess up their lives. So they are very careful about what their peer pressure is. And they're more influenced by YouTubers, and they have their own influencers. But still, when their YouTubers or influencers are wrong, they are ready to be willing to point it out and to be able to tell that the difference, the sense of discerning is always better for this generation. This generation is much more efficient. That is why they are good at multitasking. And they have the courage to love, which we didn't have. Courage to love not means just the opposite sex. The courage to love the society, to love the people. The awareness that they have towards the LGBTQ rights is much, much better than what we would have had, because we didn't know what it was. But they are aware. They are aware of the sensitivities of the LGBTQ, and they are more aware of what it means to be socially responsible. When it comes to skills training and talent, understanding, sports, music, information, everything, they want to be up on the ladder. They want to be top notch, and they want to have everything constantly updated. So even from the app that you download, everything has to be updated and updated all the time. So that is also something that they would expect from us to be updated as well. So the knowledge doesn't end there. And indeed, there is their focus on education goes on. Although they have so many distractions, we would see that their education hasn't gone down. They are well aware of what it demands to be educated. So they are looking for better opportunities, better places to study. They want to travel. They want to understand the world, and they want to be educated in a different way. So we as teachers and parents often find ourselves in a speechless spot when we try to advise this generation, because the problems that they face is very different from what we would have faced. When we had problems, our parents who had something to look back and say, in my generation, this happened, and this is how we did things differently. But to this generation, everything is new for us as well as parents and as teachers, because we didn't have this technology. So we do not know what it means to be bullied on cybercrime, to be exposed to different kinds of information that is not needed. So the thing is, we have to understand what the problem is to be able to advise them. We cannot, because it is a learning for us as well. So it is more important again and again that we learn and learn and learn more about this generation than to just be saying that there is a gap or there is a distance. they are more exposed to the world also politically, and also in terms of religion as well. We cannot go and talk to them of the kind of politics and religion that we would have understood. Their understanding is different. They are more open to questions. They're more open to exploring religion, and they're more open to questioning. So this is the better part of the generation. They're open to criticism, and they're not willing to condemn people. They would criticize but never condemn a person, because they're not prejudgmental like how our generation would have been. They're not prejudgmental about anybody. So they are vocal, and they're bold, and they're expressive in whatever they are, their thought of the events or the incidents are. They do not get blindly carried away, even if they have an idol that they really follow, or if they are really fantasizing a person as their hero. They still do not blindly get carried away by the personalities. They want to still have their own identity, and they want to be themselves, which is the best thing of this generation. They don't have an identity crisis, which we all had. We always aspire to be like somebody else, but they aspire to be the change maker. They want to be the change. So when they grow up, they like, I want to be myself. So don't tell me to be like him. So that is the reason why the generation doesn't like to be compared also. Every time you compare with somebody else, then you're in a mess. So never compare your children or your students to another person. And have you ever tried communication with this generation? That is the most funniest and the most happiest part also. So this slide, which is there on screen, the same sentence can be seen in two different ways. If you see, there is the millennials, which are of course just a little ahead of the Gen Z group. They are seeing the same sentences in two different ways, where nothing in life matters and nothing in life matters can be of two different ways. So you can either be bogged down by worries, or you could say, like, it doesn't really matter, everything is fine. No matter what happens, everything is fine. So that's the attitude of the Gen Z generation. And also about communication again. If you try to chat with a generation, the current generation, I'm sure most of our conversation would be more of a blank conversation, because we would hardly understand, because their generation communicates with lesser words, with more of abbreviations and more of emojis. So I always tell my children, I don't want this moonji. Please, I don't understand your emoji. So the thing that they want to do is shorten everything, because when we type long sentences, they want to say things in a shorter way. If we could have the next slide, it is funny how we would hardly know what most of these abbreviations mean. Can we have the next slide, please? I don't know if it is visible to all of you. The slide clearly shows a lot of abbreviations and slangs used on internet. These are the slangs usually used by kids these days when they're talking, when they're texting, and we would hardly have a clue of what they are talking of. So there are sometimes conversations at home where we would sit clueless, trying to understand, and you don't want to barge into conversations. So if we have to keep ourselves really up to date with them, I think this is also one of the ways to keep ourselves up to date as well with what this generation is really doing. And in all together, if we would, try to summarize this generation, it is a very positive generation, very promising one, which has an attitude that like never before, and which is more confident in building a better future, because their awareness and their knowledge of things is much wider and much more focused, although it is wider. And we would have to really applaud this generation for all that they are able to do in spite of all the distractions that they have. And in spite of all the temptations that they have, if they can shine from here, there is something really, really big about this generation. And I would like to request also to this generation that in this saturated world of knowledge, filled with joy and of exploration, the freedom of choice is given to you. And also give us this Generation X, the boomers, a chance to catch up with you guys. In conclusion, I would like to also say that my quote always remains the same. Use every chance as an opportunity, because opportunity comes only once in a lifetime. And I hope that you guys travel the distance down as we travel forward to catch up with you. And God bless this lovely generation. And thank you very much for this beautiful opportunity.